wasn't that shocking that there would be some sort of back and forth between you and Alex Jones. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you poke the bear, and even though the bear tends to be a fearmongerer, well, when that fearmongering bear gets poked, he's gonna lash back out. And so, yeah, I think when we were doing the opposition and talking about any of those characters who are in that far fringe world, like, they're gonna want to bite back and come up with really clever things like mispronouncing your name. So
Kepler.
they got me on that one. I tell you, I don't know how he comes up with these things. He's got a hell of a lot of great writers on his team.
But you know, Jordan Kepler's so annoying because he's a crisis actor. But you, on the other hand,
thank you.
You are a real person.
I'm a real person.
Yeah.
I am anti-Jordan Kepler. That guy is the worst.
Yeah, no.
He is the worst. If we can find him,
he's your evil twin.
He is my evil twin. So I'm anti-Kepler. I'm really pro-Klepper though.
What I love about your new show is that you infuse humor, but you also shoot the show in a very documentary-like fashion.
Yeah.
You know, almost kind of like when Ollie G used to go out and Bruno would go out and he would, back on HBO, when he would go and interview like politicians, but then also regular people and talk about issues.
Yeah.
But you're talking about gun control, you're talking about the suicide rate for veterans and how 20 veterans a day commit suicide. Yeah. You're talking about so many important issues, and yet you still infuse humor. How do you conjoin politics and social issues with humor?
It's tough. I will say for us, we start with something we care about, and then we trust that we can find some levity in it. What you realize is like people are working really hard to try to change things, whether it's PTSD, whether it's people trying to stop a pipeline. Like, people care about good things. They care about doing good in the world. What you also find out is it's really hard to do those things. And you throw somebody like me who's lanky, doesn't do well in the sun, out there on the front lines with people, what you quickly find out is like, oh, there's humor there. And often the humor is pointed back at somebody who's ill-equipped for the job. So me being unable to do things, that's something where I think that's what I can lend to these situations, my lack of ability.
How much of it is scripted versus improv? Because I feel like you always have jokes on the fly that you're popping out, but there's also a very specific structure to the show.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Well, I'm incredibly funny, and so that's a thing that the show is always going to get. We prep a lot before we go out, so we're ready for a couple different directions things will go in, but this show is a doc, and so we just spend time with them, and we're in the moment. The best things are the things that are surprises. So what you're seeing on the show is primarily what's happening in that moment. Like, I go out with some assumptions and maybe some things that I think I want to say, but more often than not, that all gets thrown out the door day one, and you just react. And so the show feels like an improvised show. I came back from doing Chicago, doing New York. I lived in that world. It was like, once you let go of your preconceived notions and you let yourself find some comedy in the moment, like, that's the best stuff.
And in the era of #fake news, how do you stay informed? Because you have to be on top of all of this if you're going to bring comedy to it. You have to know all of the issues inside out. How do you stay informed?
Well, you try to read as many sources as you can and back check as much as you can. We find stories and then we follow up, I think, and then we go there. And the big important thing with this show is like, go talk to those people face to face. So you might think one thing about PTSD or the VA, and then you find yourself there at the VA with a veteran dealing with PTSD, and the story changes. So I think that's important. Talk to the source.
Yeah. Go right to it.
Go right to that source.
Well,
make a beeline.
Thank you so much, Mr. Klepper.
Thank you very much.
Klepper,
You nailed it.
not Kepler.
No, you nailed it.
Thank you.